Today, we're going to talk about something really fascinating. It's the psychological quirk that affects all of us, every single day, whether we're at our desk or in a science lab. It all boils down to one simple thing. What happens to us when we know we're being watched? So let's just jump right in. We're talking about the power of the observer, this kind of invisible influence someone has just by watching. You totally know this feeling, right? Imagine this. Your boss walks by your desk and bam, suddenly you're typing like a maniac, sitting up perfectly straight, looking like the busiest person in the entire office. It's like you're putting on a show. Well, guess what? There's actually a name for that. And that's it. That's the Hawthorne Effect. It's this really subtle but super powerful change in how we act just because we're aware someone's paying attention to us. It's not that the work got harder or easier. It's that we changed, simply from being noticed. All right, so where did this idea even come from? Well, the story behind it is actually a fantastic little mystery. And believe it or not, it all started with light bulbs. So, picture this. We're in Chicago at this huge factory called the Western Electric Hawthorne Works. This is the heart of industrial America, a place where every second counts and efficiency is king. We're talking about the mid-1920s here. A bunch of researchers, including a team that would later be led by a guy named Elton Mayo, they kick off a series of studies. And these studies would go on for years and totally flip our understanding of work on its head. And their original goal was super simple, really straightforward. They were trying to solve what seemed like a basic engineering problem. If we improve the lighting, will people be more productive? I mean, it makes total sense, right? Better light, better work. And at first, it looked like they had their answer. Yep, they cranked up the lights, and just like they thought, productivity went up. So problem solved, case closed, right? Well, not so fast. Because this is where the plot really thickens. The researchers, they wanted to be thorough, so they thought, okay, what happens if we do the exact opposite? What if we actually make the lights dimmer? And this is the part that blew everyone's minds. They dimmed the lights, made it harder for people to see what they were doing, and productivity, it still went up. This made absolutely no sense. Clearly, the lighting wasn't the thing that mattered. Something else was going on here. And that something else, that was the key. It led to this massive realization that, people aren't just parts in a big machine. They're way more complicated than that. It turned out the key factor had nothing to do with the lighting at all. It was the attention. The workers were doing better because they knew they were being studied. They felt important, they felt like someone cared, and that feeling, that attention, was way more powerful than any light bulb. So that was the real discovery here. The researchers had accidentally stumbled upon the power of all these human factors, things like social dynamics, morale, and just that simple feeling of being valued. That was the secret sauce. See, before this, the thinking was really mechanical. You treat a worker like a cog in a machine, tweak the conditions, get more output. The Hawthorne studies just shattered that whole idea. It was the beginning of a huge shift towards thinking about the people in the workplace. But we have to be honest here. As massive as this discovery was, the original research, well, it wasn't exactly perfect. In fact, if you look at it with modern eyes, there were some pretty big flaws. So when you look at its legacy, it's kind of two-sided. On the one hand, yeah, it totally revolutionized management and put a focus on human relations. But on the other hand, the studies themselves were, frankly, a bit of a mess. I mean, they didn't have proper control groups and the results got overgeneralized. It's like they found this amazing gem of an idea inside a really flawed scientific package. And of course, other scientists have come along and said, hey, wait a minute. Maybe it wasn't just attention. Maybe it was the novelty effect. Just the excitement of something new. Or maybe it was because the workers were getting direct feedback on their performance for the first time. There's even this idea of demand characteristics, which is basically where people try to figure out what the researchers are looking for and then give them that result. So with all these questions about the original study, you might be wondering, why do we still talk about the Hawthorne effect almost a century later? Well, the answer is simple, because we see it playing out all around us, every single day. Think about it. In a science lab, researchers always have to worry about how their presence might be influencing the results. In an office, the whole idea of employee engagement is basically built on the Hawthorne principle. And in a classroom, a teacher just walking around the room can completely change how students behave. The setting is different, but the core idea is exactly the same. And that really is the big takeaway here. The act of observation is never neutral.
It actively changes the thing being observed. So whether you're a manager, a scientist, a teacher, whatever, you have to realize that your attention isn't passive. It's a force that has a real impact.
Which kind of leaves us with this big, fascinating question to chew on, doesn't it? If being watched changes everything, then what does normal behavior even mean? How can we ever really know how someone acts when they're truly alone? It makes you wonder, maybe there's always an audience, even when that audience is just ourselves.